Meeting, and let's go ahead and start with the roll call.
Thank you. I'll begin with those of us in person. Alternate Director Shannon.
Here.
Dr. Barbadillo.
Here.
Fruin.
Here.
Scozola.
Here.
Showalter.
Here.
Walia.
Here.
Chair Tyson.
Here.
Vice Chair Klein.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Meadows.
Present.
Carruthers.
Here.
Thank you. Joining us remotely, Director Hilton.
Here.
Thank you. We have all members participating this evening.
Great, thank you. Thank you for making it easy for us to figure out when it was our turn, too. Let's see, move on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak? Now that we do have one, go ahead and go up to the lectern, and you know the rules. You can provide comments up to 3 minutes, and go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
You're not on.
There you go. You are. Bruce Carney, Mountain View resident. I've been thinking lately about carbon taxes. We won't see a mandated carbon tax in the United States for 4 more years. But what about voluntary carbon taxes? What about the opportunity that we each have when we book an airline flight to offset the emissions of the plane? What about if we were offered an opportunity to offset our natural gas usage, if we were offered an opportunity to offset the emissions from our cars? Most of us wouldn't, but some of us would. And so I'm thinking a lot these days about a voluntary carbon tax at the city level. And when Carbon Free Mountain View has its booth at the upcoming Earth Day event, I'll be doing polling around that. Trying to find out how many people, even among those who had come to an Earth Day event, certainly a self-selected group of environmentally friendly people, how many of them would say yes to a carbon tax? What aspects of their life do they think a carbon tax should apply to? And perhaps more importantly, how many dollars per ton do they think would be a fair number to spend? Now, if you collected a tax like that entirely voluntarily, you'd probably want to promise some beneficial use of the money. And in Mountain View, given the number of rent-stabilized apartments we have, it would probably be to do decarbonization of those rent-stabilized units to somehow incentivize property owners to do the right thing for the planet. And so I just wanted to throw that out because I know almost all of you will be having Earth Day events in your cities. And if you might want to persuade your staff or your local climate advocates to play around with the idea, I would be happy to share any materials that Carbon Free Mountain View creates with your environmental advocates in your communities.
Thank you, Bruce. I think that's a good message to pass on. Do we have any other public members wishing to speak?
No, Chair.
Very good, thank you. Let's move on to our consent calendar. You will all notice that we got most of the way through the alphabet. We got through 1O. So we have quite a few items, and some of them are a bit technical. I will say, just for any of the members of the public, we've had chances to review some of these ahead of time, and so that's it's by putting it on consent doesn't mean that it's less important, but that we have had the chance to review that. Do we have any members of the board wishing to pull items from consent? Seeing none, I'd be looking for a motion, or I could do. Do I have to do it before a motion? I should. Okay. Do we have any members of the public who wish to offer comments on the consent? We do not see. No. In that case, I'd be looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar. Second.
Thank you. Thank you, directors. Let's go with the roll call vote.
Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein.
Yes.
Director Scozola.
Aye.
Fruin.
Aye.
Meadows.
Aye.
Rennie.
Aye.
Barbadillo.
Aye.
Shannon.
Yes.
Carruthers.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Walia.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Hilton.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you, everybody. In that case, we'll move straight on to the regular calendar, and number 2 is the CEO report. Let's hear it.
Good evening, Chair, Directors. All right, well, we have a lot on the agenda, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the CEO report. But I do want to make a few announcements. First, in recognition of Women's History Month, I wanted to do a special recognition of one of our directors, Yvonne Martinez Beltran, who is not here tonight, but Tanya Carruthers is here in her place. We learned this afternoon that she was named by Senator David Cortese as the Woman of the Year for his district. And so a big congratulations to Yvonne, very well deserved. Okay, since last meeting, we got to share some pretty exciting news with the board and with the press and with our community, starting with one thing that we're very super proud of, and that's a recent upgrade of our credit rating by Moody's from a Baa1 to an A3. This recognition is very well deserved. It's really a collective effort of the board and of staff to keep their eye on the ball at all times in trying to move SBCE into a more kind of stable a position. This rating will enable us to better negotiate contracts with suppliers for power purchase agreements and other clean energy type of transactions. So we're very proud of this accomplishment, and we share that with you. The second announcement that we made this month was that we closed on the purchase of a new headquarters for Silicon Valley Clean Energy and our community. We're excited about the building. Some of you have got to tour it. If you haven't been able to tour it, we're more than happy to walk you through it. We will we have started our process to kind of design and dream of what that space could be for staff and for our community. We have a request for proposals out on the streets right now to hire a project manager who will help oversee the design and the build of that building. And so we hope to schedule something in the near future with the board to get your input as well as the representatives of the community. And then we have two staff presentations. They'll be brief. One is from Benna Chang, who will be talking about some recent legislative bills that have been introduced and what's going on in the federal government.
Good evening, Chair and board members. Benna Chang, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs. Today, I'm bringing up two important updates on state bills and then to give you a quick update on federal activities as well. So the first state bill that we'd like to talk about is SB 540 by Becker and Stern. It's super exciting to see that this bill was introduced in the legislature. The bill would create a new regional organization to operate energy markets in the West. And this will allow California to sell excess energy, for example, solar energy during the middle of the day, and buy energy from other states like wind in the evening hours. The bill will help lower costs, improve reliability, and make it easier to meet the state and SBCE's clean energy goals. This is an important part of our legislative strategy to address affordability this session. SBCE is an early supporter of this bill, and we joined a large coalition including labor, environmental groups, and business groups to advocate for the bill. The next bill we wanted to talk about is AB 306 by Schultz and Rivas. This is a bill that would put a 6-year pause on state and local residential building code updates, unless these updates fall under very narrow exemptions. Under the bill, local jurisdictions can grandfather in their existing REACH codes, but could not adopt new REACH codes for the next 6 years. SBCE is very concerned about this bill and the broad impact of it. We wrote a concerns letter with other fellow CCAs and asked for 2 major amendments to the bill. First is to clarify the state can still adopt the 2025 code, and local jurisdictions can also adopt the new state code. And then the second amendment was to narrow the bill to new construction so that local agencies can continue to pursue existing building policies. So this morning, the bill passed out of the Assembly Housing Committee. We will continue to work with the authors on the bill, have had some good conversations. A lot of work is left to be done. If you're interested in helping out on this bill, please let me know. I'm happy to chat more with you and your staff on it. Finally, on the federal side, you might have seen that a district court judge recently issued a final ruling that ordered the federal administration to unfreeze congressionally appropriated funding to award grantees. As you might remember, SBCE was part of a coalition with the city of San Jose to get a charging, fueling, and infrastructure grant for charging stations in the county. Unfortunately, we have not seen any activity from that award. I saw an article from Politico today that reported out on the U.S. Department of Transportation memo that asked staff to pause and review all programs that were related to electric vehicles, bike infrastructure, DEI initiatives, et cetera. So I think the administration we've heard plans to appeal the ruling from the district court judge, and we will learn more about what will be happening. In better news, though, we heard this week that the state is reopening applications for the HERA home rebate programs. Which you might remember, these are $4,000 to $8,000 rebates for income qualified homeowners to electrify. This is also a program that was funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, so it's really good to see that those applications are being opened again. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Director Rennie, please.
I know we have lots on our agenda, but I'm very curious on the SB 540, was it, Bill? You said that the laborers joined in support of that. And traditionally, labor is not like the idea of us importing from outside the state because they want things built locally kind of thing. How did we get them on board? What's changed?
So Mark Joseph, which is the head of IBEW, testified in committee actually this afternoon about the bill and said that this version of the regionalization conversation is really different than previous versions, that it is only addressing the energy markets that would be shared with the West. So it doesn't include some of the more ambitious, broader proposals that were proposed in the past. For example, that would take over all of transmission planning and funding services across the West. So labor is a lot more comfortable with this approach and has been a strong supporter throughout.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One more.
Ikmai.
Yes, thank you, Bennett, for the update on the funding. We are facing similar issues where the money is supposed to be appropriated to the county, for example, and the check is never showed up, or the funding never came through. Reading the comments today from the EPA administrator, new one, the quote, "This drives a dagger through the heart of climate change religion." It's frankly terrifying what's going on out there. I don't think I'm being overstating the obvious here. And I just want to say, please keep us posted and our congressional representative posted as well regarding these funds that should have arrived a long time ago. And we really need to keep pushing to make sure that this stuff just doesn't disappear somehow through the ether. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Follow up, follow up, follow up. Thanks.
Did you, Director Showalter?
Yeah, I have a question about AB 306. I wasn't sure quite what you meant by you narrow the bill to allow new construction. So that would mean that we couldn't, we would be able to require all electric for new construction, but we wouldn't be able to require that for remodels or what?
Right, sorry, it's very confusing. So right now the bill says that state and local governments can adopt new codes for all residential, so both new and existing. What we're asking for is for the bill to be narrowed so that you could not adopt new codes for new construction. And the reason why is that the 2025 state building code is actually pretty good. It's electric preferred. So we think new construction is on a really good path. But all the work that you guys have been focused on is really around existing buildings. We know that is a larger pool of housing stock that needs to be updated. And for example, I know the team has been looking at requiring heat pumps upon AC replacement, or if you're putting in a new AC unit. That way you don't have to pull out that unit later when things like the Bay Area Air District's rules come in and you can't buy a gas furnace. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yes, thank you. And so we have some information. I know that or I understood that the building code is really brought up in July, or it's finalized in July. So we have we have early versions of it. That's what that this is based on.
Right. So my understanding is that the state building code is being adopted currently, right now. The bill is a little bit unclear about whether or not this year's state building code can still move forward. So that's one of the clarification amendments that we have offered to make sure that everybody knows the state building code can be adopted, the 2025 code for this year, and that local governments can continue to adopt that state building code.
Thank you so much.
Great. I don't see any other director comments. I would like to say that speaking for all of us, I think we find this to be a great area of concern and appreciate your regular updates and bringing those to us. There's still more to come. So you want to?
Thank you, Bennett. Okay, the last item that I wanted to highlight was the newest member of our team, Philip Wing, who is here tonight. He joined us recently as an information technology support specialist. Philip has over 9 years of IT experience supporting over 500 employees. Today, I made him the safety officer when the lights went out too, and he did really well. So, good addition.
My name is Philip. I'm the IT support specialist here at Silicon Valley Clean Energy. I'm very excited to be here. I was previously with Prometheus Real Estate Group. I was there for 6 years doing IT for them. Just a little about myself. I'm from the Bay Area, born and raised. I like photography, cooking, and spending time with my family. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope I get to meet all of you. Thank you.
Welcome, Philip.
Okay, that concludes my CEO report, unless you have any questions.
Great. Do we see any further questions? Do we have any comments from the public? Not seeing any. Thank you for that report. Let's move straight on to item number 3, which is receiving the audit results. I do believe we've got Amrit here and remote auditor. And by the way, before you give, I'm going to steal his punchline. It was the most boring audit meeting ever, and I'm so glad. Go ahead. Now I've stolen your thunder.
Well, I wouldn't say the most boring, but it was a boring audit. But for those of you in the financial world, I think boring in audit is usually considered a really good thing. So you're definitely stealing the thunder, and we're starting with the lead. But the result was a boring, unmodified opinion on our audited financial statements. But I will take a step back and start at the beginning. So next slide, and I'll do a brief introduction. I'm Kellen Gilbert. I'm the audit partner on the engagement. Alana Rico is not on the call tonight. I didn't want to make her stay on so late, but she was the senior who's assisted me. She works on multiple CCAs, and she's a great asset to have on the team. Next slide, please. And so just for the board, if you're wondering about the name change, we used to be Pacinti and Brinker. And in January, we combined our practices with Kosmatka Donnelly & Co., which is an accounting firm in Oregon. And this is actually part one of a multi-part combination where we will be unveiling a unified name over the summer of 2025. And this is, we're really excited about this. This is giving us, which is a relatively, in the auditing world, a smaller local firm. We're maintaining local control, but we're now going to have a lot more resources. There's a lot more technology advancements that we're able to do with part of this bigger merged group. So far, so good. It's been a great experience for us, and we're really hoping that it's going to be a great advantage for our people and our clients. And most importantly, that I think you would want to know is that this means no changes to staffing, to costs, or timing, or any of the services that we provide to you. everything's going to be operated from the Santa Rosa office just like it has been. So absolutely no changes in the services that we're providing. Next slide, please. And this is just to reiterate that, to put in writing that we do have a signed contract through the September 30, 2026 year. So that would be field work possibly out into 2027, but that is the 2026 financial statement. We will be carrying out those services. There's no changes to the contract from our perspective, other than the name change. And myself, Kellen Gilbert, will be the audit partner throughout the remainder of the contract. So again, just wanted to reassure that there's going to be no changes from your perspective. Next slide, please. All right, so now we get to the boring stuff, an unmodified opinion. What that means is that based on our opinion, the financial statements were free of material misstatement, which is the highest or cleanest level of audit opinion that we can provide. So again, really, really good news. Next slide, please. And I always like to come back to this slide. You've probably heard me say it before if you've been on the board for a while, but I like to start because there is such a misconception between what the roles are between an auditor and the client. Management or the client is responsible for the financial statements. They're responsible for all the underlying accounting, all the transactions, and establishing and maintaining a system of internal controls to ensure the accuracy of those financial statements. We as the auditor, really all we're responsible for is providing our opinion on whether or not we think the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We do have a lot of different hoops that we have to go through to get to that point, but ultimately the auditor's opinion is the only product that the auditor provides, and the rest of the financial statements is provided by management. So to provide an opinion, we consider the risk of material misstatement of the financial statements. We consider inherent risk, which is also known as just the underlying complexity of transactions and the financial processes. And we also consider internal controls, essentially what are the controls over those financial processes to ensure that management is taking to ensure that the transactions are accounted for correctly. Once we've determined our risk assessment, we then perform a series of tests over year-end balances, transactions throughout the year. We'll do analytical procedures, we'll send confirmations, all sorts of different auditing techniques to ensure the accuracy of that information. Lastly, but also very importantly, we will evaluate the adequacy of the note disclosures to assure that they are complete and accurate and without bias. Next slide, please. Okay, so taking a step back at the risk assessment process, what do we do here to gain an understanding of the entity's operating characteristics? We really want to look at your accounting practices and procedures. We'll do walkthroughs of those procedures, making sure that what is actually documented in your internal accounting processes is actually matches what the procedures are being performed. We want to make sure that there's no discrepancies there. We use our knowledge of other similar entities, including CCAs, to make sure that we don't see any major discrepancies or major areas of potential weakness in those processes. And then again, we review the internal controls over those significant transaction cycles to make sure that that they are in place and functioning properly. Next slide, please. So this is just some of the significant areas of focus. This is not supposed to be all-inclusive, but hitting on the high end of the areas. Revenue recognition and accounts receivable, as well as accrued revenue. That's always a presumed significant risk, meaning that we always want to take a look at revenue and make sure that accounts receivable are recorded appropriately. We do that through multiple different tests. We take a sample of customer billings throughout the year. We relate the total cash that comes in during the year to the total revenue just for a reasonableness check. And then we also look at a series of transactions that take place over the year to make sure that the revenue recognition is being consistent throughout the year. We don't want to see changes in the revenue recognition policy during the year. Cash is a pretty easy area to audit from our perspective. However, it's obviously extremely important to the financial statements. So we want to send confirmations to financial institutions to get third-party verification. And then we would audit any material reconciling items. Next slide, please. Accrued cost of electricity, a big part of your statement of net position, as well as other liabilities. What we're looking for here is the completeness assertion. We want to make sure that all liabilities that should be captured in the current period are correctly captured, and that any expenses that belong in the subsequent period are excluded. So really, we're looking to make sure that liabilities are complete and accurate at year end. And finally, as I mentioned before, the financial statement note disclosure is one of the most important parts of the financial statements. We read those, we look at disclosure checklists. We want to make sure that only required disclosures are present, that there's no unnecessary disclosures, and that if there are any additional information within those disclosures, that there's nothing that we would consider to be bias where management could potentially mislead the user of the financial statements. Next slide, please. So this section is called the required board communication. This is where we provide feedback to you, who we consider to be those charged with governance, basically who has the authority over management and the overall organization. So again, some of these are just boilerplate, but we want to make sure that we report them out to you, that there were no material accounting policies adopted. We didn't identify any significant or unusual transactions, so a transaction that we weren't sure how to account for, something kind of outside the norms. We didn't identify any of those. We didn't propose any adjustments for the financial statements. And again, there were no reportable deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. Next slide. There were no disagreements with management, and we did not encounter any difficulties. Additionally, our scope to what we were looking at was not limited, meaning that all the documents that we requested, we were given access to. That's really, really important during an audit. And just overall, we were appreciative of the work of Mike Maher being able to complete the audit on time, on schedule. It was a relatively boring and smooth audit, and we appreciate that. So thank you. Excuse me. And I think that's the last slide. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the presentation or on the financial statements if there are any.
I don't see any, but Amrit, did you have anything you wish to add?
No, I'll just add that the process began with the audit committee at the end of their fiscal year. This is for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024. Shortly before that, or right after that, actually in October, the audit committee met with the auditors, Kellen and the team, and the auditors presented a game plan of conducting the audit. And then after the completion of the audit, the audit committee met on February 28th and went through the audit as well, and they recommended that the board receive the results of the audit. And also the chair of the audit committee, Director Mekachek, also provided a letter in your package describing the steps taken for the audit and the independent discussions he had with the auditors as well on this audit.
Great, thank you, Amrit. Give directors another chance if there was a question. Go ahead, Director Barbadillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you audited similar agencies like the Silicon Clean Energy? Are they comparable to what a clean bill of findings that you had?
Yes, not every financial statement that I've audited obviously gets a clean opinion. We do audit a number of different CCAs, and I would say the majority of them have been clean opinions through the years.
Right. With your analysis of it, I'm looking at the report. It's mostly because we have surpluses from the last few years. Is that a basis of why the financial is so balanced?
No, our opinion isn't on the overall health of the financial statements. It's based off of whether or not the financial data within the financial statements is accurate. So you could have a financial statement that didn't have the reserves, that was in a unhealthy position, and it could still receive a clean audit opinion if everything was accurate.
All right, it's because every information comes from the agency, and you just apply modalities and principles of accounting, and whether it's negative or positive, it's a clean bill, right?
Yeah, essentially, if it's accurate or not accurate, if you said positive, if that means accurate, then yes.
Right. So maybe the question is for staff. How come we have a lot of surpluses? From last year, we have doubled at 50%. We have 161 million in surpluses, and this is mostly because of operating surplus.
I can
I'm
address
just curious.
that now, or I can address that as part of the media budget when we talk about the reserves.
That will come up during our budget discussion for the item 4. But why don't you give it a try right now?
Yeah, so to give a short answer right now, we basically, in our business, there's a lot of risks. Right. And we have to basically make sure that we have adequate reserves that we can handle the risks that we face. And we do, following industry standard practices, one of the things we do is stress test analysis to see if certain extreme but plausible events were to occur, do we have the financial means to withstand them? So that's one of the bases. Every operating company or agency like ours needs some kind of an operating reserve. So that and that analysis is something that will also come before the board. We do that every year. We'll bring that to the board in June, which we'll then use to set a reserve policy, update the reserve targets, and that's how we manage the reserve levels. And then when you look at our financial position, there are also dollars that have been allocated, what we call earmark funds, like to programs, and in this case, a building fund that have not been recognized on the financial statements, but they have been earmarked for a certain purpose. But under GAAP accounting, you only recognize them when you incur them. So that's another reason.
All right. Well, thank you for the short answer. I'll reserve my long question when we go to the budget. But what I'm trying to, my thoughts, right? And then this will be answered in the budget later on, and maybe further discussions. Is that we're having a lot of surplus, earmark or not, right? I'm trying to see, again, as new as I am, right, giving it back to the consumers. I don't know if that's an avenue later on, but if we're having these lots of surplus, then maybe that's an option. Like the gentleman who spoke, there may be some incentives with regards to clean energy programs like that we can supplement with the surpluses that we have. That's just a thought. Again, I'll reserve it when we are going to talk about the budget.
I think that will be more appropriate in the budget discussion. We will touch on all of those aspects.
Agree. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Let me see if we have any comments from the public.
No comments, Chair.
We do not. So any further comments? Thank you for the presentation. As I said, so I'm a new member of the audit committee. Actually, if you're looking for a committee to join that only has 2 meetings a year, and it's boring, I mean, how can you go wrong? So I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
All right, Director Showalter seconded it. So let's go with the roll call.
Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Yes.
Director Swazola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Barbadillo?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Carruthers?
Yes.
Showalter?
Yes.
Walia?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Great. And thanks again to the audit committee, including Director Mekachuk, who served as chair. Let's move on then to item number 4, which is our adopting a resolution for our mid-year operating budget. And I do believe Amrit stays right where he is.
Thank you, Chair Tyson. So, thank you. So I'm here to present the mid-year budget. A lot of you are familiar with our budgeting process. We go through an extensive process, but I'll touch on some highlights of the timeline. So at the end of this discussion, we will be asking you to approve a resolution adopting the proposed budget. The areas I'm going to touch on, I'm going to very briefly go over the timeline in our budgeting process, highlight the changes since the last time we adjusted the budget, which was in December. And then we'll show the comparison of the two budgets. We'll touch on the reserves, and we can go into the discussion of how we manage the reserves at that point as well. And then we'll also talk about, based on reserves, we are advocating, and this was a lot of discussion we had at the Finance and Administration Committee, that we provide customers with some rate relief and in the form of a bill credit to disperse some funds. And then one of the things we're requesting, if you remember when we brought the original budget in September, we said at that time we were going through and we were basically aligning and optimizing our organization. When Monica came on board as CEO, she said, okay, what are the opportunities to move us to the next level at SBC 3.0 that we are internally calling. And at that time we said we will revisit the staffing in media budget. So I'll go through that, and at the end we'll ask you for your vote. So that's the game plan. In terms of the budget process, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I can certainly entertain any questions we have. As you know, we adopt budget in September for fiscal year that begins October 1st. In December, we do a very important update. We don't update the entire budget, but we update our revenue projections and our power supply expenses. And the reason we do that is because we know our revenue projections are very dependent on outcome of PG&E's rates and PCIA charge that PG&E levies on our customers. And PCIA, basically, as a reminder, is charge we pay to PG&E because when our customers were PG&E customers, they had procured certain amount of resources, and based on state rule and law, they said basically when these customers depart, the financial obligations of this portion of the portfolio go with the customers. So depending on how the market value changes, determines the level of PCIA. And we get a sense of that as we approach December as to what the likely rates the CPUC will adopt for PG&E generation rates, as well as for the PCIA. So we do this update in December. Then as every year, we do come back in mid-year, and this is where we do a full adjustment to our budget, account for any revenue changes since the final adoption of rates in January, as well as update power supply costs. As you know, we deal with a very volatile commodity, so anytime we're going to update budget, we will update power supply expenses, and then we update the full department expenses as well, all the operating expenses. So this is a full full development of the budget, unlike the December update. So I'll give you the punchlines at the beginning, and then we can dig into the details of this. So you can see we're going to have a healthy contribution to reserves. In December, we had projected something like $97 million. With the bill credit that we're proposing for customer, we come close to that at $98. How is that possible? Well, revenues actually came in pretty close to what we were projecting in December. It's not that we predicted the final rates accurately, they were close enough. There were pluses and minuses, and when we trued them all up, we were off by $3 million. The actual rates were actually slightly higher, but there were some other adjustments to revenues that brought it down $3 million. But the big story here is the power supply cost. Okay, so what's happening with power supply? Energy prices are coming down. Actually, the energy component has been coming down for a while, but what was lagging and is catching up very fast and with dramatic decreases is the forward RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard, renewable energy premium price is coming down. The resource adequacy, the capacity that we have to buy, RA costs are coming down, as well as GHG green attributes are coming down. So that's a big part of it. And the other part is if you remember that we've been talking about the new framework for resource adequacy, the CAISO moving to, or the rules basically moving from a simple day, one number a month, to a 24 numbers, basically for an entire day, slice of day. Basically looking at CAISO's worst day for each month and planning a reserve target to that. In anticipation of this, we had made some reserves as to how much of resource adequacy we would need to comply with these new rules. The rules actually have been implemented fairly well, and our portfolio has behaved fairly well. So we have basically adjusted our portfolio for the amount of resource adequacy that we need. So that has brought down a big component of this reduction in power supply cost. The other big item is as I said, we're proposing a $35 million bill credit, and I will go into more details of this, and this was based on a detailed discussion with the Finance Committee. The operating expenses, the big component is the 5 positions we're asking, and I'll go through in detail of that. And the 5-year projection that we do is showing that the future year is negative. Next year is going to be quite a bit negative. And the year after that is slightly negative, and then the 2 years after that is slightly positive. And that's, again, our current projections. These are based on market prices that we observe in the marketplace that we use in our models. And market price will change, and they have already changed since we have put this budget together. They change day to day, hour to hour basis, as with any traded commodity. Okay, so there's a table there that does the math that shows the adjustments from the December update to this update. And this slide here shows more detailed line items. And there's more detailed line items if you're interested. That's in the appendix as well as in your staff report. You can see the big components, as I mentioned, is the power supply and then the bill credit for all customers that we're proposing.
Go ahead.
I'm sure, Imran, I think there might be a typo. If we go back a couple of screens on the one more. Yeah. The power supply cost here indicates negative 40.6. Do you mean positive actually on this slide? Because this is actually our gain that you're talking about, right? Because the cost is
it's a reduction in our cost.
Right.
So for this year, it's actually lower. So instead of let's look at it in the next slide.
But you can't add up those numbers is because there is a sign change implied in the category. Yes.
Because some are revenues, some are, exactly. You have to know which ones contribute how.
It was just a test.
All right, thank you.
I have to think about that presentation next time now. Okay, getting to more future projections. This is our reserve projection. So here I can go into more details, and I don't mind questions at this point on how we do reserve calculations. So again, we basically look at our reserves, and basically we determined last year the stress test analysis that we did, and also the indications if you remember last year's discussion in June, we talked about rating agencies and the level of liquidity they asked that they would like to see. And we said, based on the stress test analysis and the indications we got from the rating agencies, a good target was to be at 350 days of cash on hand. And based on that analysis that was presented to the board approved 350 days of target reserves. And if you look at the S&P, not S&P, the Moody's upgrade we got, they talked explicitly about our liquidity, and a key driver for why they increased our credit rating. And as Monica mentioned, that credit rating is very important to us. It drives down the cost of doing business, and that savings goes to our customers. So the way reserves is, we have a lower target. The red line there is 120 days. We don't want to fall below that. We have to take actions to make sure we stay above that. Then we have a maximum of 500 days of cash, and based on the reserve policy, if we are to exceed that, we have to come back to the board and make proposals to get below that as to what we're going to do with that funds. Between target and the maximum, we can have variations and fluctuations. But we target to manage it to around 350 days, because that's what our analysis indicated. And before I go into more details, let me show there's two bars there, right? When I say target to 350 days, I'm looking at the darker shade of the blue there. And that's because we take out the earmarked funds that I talked about earlier. We have set aside money for programs, building that we have not yet spent. The blue says basically take those earmarked funds out, and that's what we measure with these targets. The lighter shade of blue, it says, what if we were to stop spending that? Because the board always has the right. Things that are allocated but not spent, the board can always say, bring them back into reserves. So we show that, and it's also important for public and our counterparties and our rating agencies to see this metric as well. So there are many constituents to these reports that we produce.
And I gather your message on this is that we do have some discretion if we ran into some sort of trouble, and that also logically those allocated but unspent numbers, quantities, decrease over time as we gradually spend them. So it's logical, the pale and the dark blue should converge on the same number if you look far enough out.
Very well said, exactly. So over a 5-year projection, we're saying we're going to end up spending them. And as Justin has explained, and will probably explain, we have ramped up our programs effort. There's always traction when you start a program, but it continues to grow, right, as customers learn and take advantage of them. So looking at the reserve and the reserve projections, this bakes into the $35 million bill credit that I'm going to talk about in the next slide. So if with that taken into account, you can see that even with the negative projections we're seeing, remember why we're seeing negative projections? The prices are coming down. And for some of our new board members that may say, why is prices coming down and our bottom line is not improving? And the reason for that has to do with that PCIA I talked about. When prices come down, the PG&E is going to charge us more because it's saying we bought these resources on behalf of your customers that are more uneconomic now, or what we call mark-to-market loss. And they will charge us higher rate next year. And this year's rate, even though we're doing really well next year, you can never look at 1 year's rates. You have to always at least look 2 years out, because this year's rate that PG&E set for PCIA and its own generation rate for its customers has a balancing account. It's based on a forecast of same type of forecast that we presented in December, which showed prices were higher than what they were, which means on their balancing account for PCIA, they're under collecting. So we are showing good margin this year is because we are paying lower PCIA than we really ought to be paying based on current market prices. So that's why our bottom line this year is good. But next year, we're going to have to return this back, and that's why we're forecasting negative bottom line. Same with their generation rate, right? This year, they are basically charging their customers less than at current market. They're charging their customers more than at the current market prices. So next year, they will have to give that back to the customers, and their rates will come down. Okay, so looking at this and the bill credit, you can see that even with the bill credit, we will stay at or close to 350 days of cash on hand. So remember this picture when I go into the next slide. So one-time bill credit. So we engaged in a lot of discussion with the Finance and Admin Committee. We said, if you remember, I'll bring one more concept, the Clean Community Fund that Zoe presented at the December and that you just approved in the consent calendar. We had said we will come at this mid-year budget to see if we should fund that. And one of the components of that was to set aside for bill relief for customers. And basically what we've decided, along with the Finance and Admin Committee, is rather than providing customers bill relief in the future, it makes sense to provide bill relief now, because as I talked about, while prices are coming down, our bottom line is coming down, but from a customer perspective, their rate will come down. So you can see on the table there, I'm missing the legend, it's cents per kilowatt hour, but more important is the year-over-year change. You can see next year, their rates will come down more, and even in the future, based on this projection, those rates will be lower than what they are now. So if we were to provide a bill relief, it makes sense to provide it this year. Okay, so that's why we're proposing a bill relief this year, and looking ahead, we can still manage our liquidity. There were two alternatives considered: provide a 10% volumetric rate. So currently, in the rates that the board approved, we provide all customers 4% discount relative to comparable PG&E rates. In essence, we provide total of 5%, but we took that 1% dollar equivalent and provide a bill credit to low-income customers, which amounts to this. So they get the 4%, and then they get the bill credit, which is about $17.50 a month. And then, of course, they get a discount. Low-income customers get further discounted rates on PG&E, T&D portion. So all in all, their bill is more than 50% lower than non-care residential rate or non-low-income rates. So we had considered 10%, taking the 4%. We can take the 4% and do a similar volumetric discount, take it to 10%, or we can do a bill credit, number of bill credits. Every month we give a small bill credit, like we do $17.50 for the low-income customers. But we Finance Committee said, go back, think what makes sense logistically, from a customer perspective, from a marketing perspective, what makes overall sense. And we thought about it, and we said, basically, if we were to provide a small dollar amount for all customers each month, that's not as meaningful or impactful, and the messaging is going to be lost as well. What we've proposing is to do a one-time bill credit in the month of August, which is when most customers see their largest bill. Highest bill most customers face is in August. So we decided to do a bill credit, and I'll show you what that looks like in the next slide. And the cost of this, we wanted to keep it in equivalent terms as if we were giving them a volumetric 10% discount for the entire calendar year 2025, 3 months of which is in next fiscal year. But if we were up that to this year so that we can give them a 10% from January of 2025 to December of 2025, a 10% discount. In dollar amounts, it's about $33 million on expected basis. Okay, so you heard me say 35 million. You're saying, why am I saying 35 million? When we do bill credit, we have to know the number of customers, right? When we go and compute the bill credits and there's normal variation in accounts. Sometimes if you look at our customer count in the treasurer report every month we provide you'll see there's some variability. We're putting some cushion there, 2 million, which should be more than sufficient, we think, in case the customer account, number of account changes. Once we set the credit, let's say $50 for residential customers, but we end up getting more residential customer accounts. And for some reason, overall accounts end up being more that month. We will end up spending more than 33 million because we had targeted for a specific set of customer numbers to spend 33 million. So we're putting a buffer of 2 million for that. Mm-hmm. So we don't exceed what's authorized by the board. So here's an illustrative bill credit per customer. Again, the way we're proposing it, and we'll do some further analysis and I'll explain the flexibility we're asking. What we're saying is for residential, for example, here that additional amount shown is about $48 for that 1 month in August. What we're saying is, let's take the 33 million, spread it across these segments of customers that we have. This is illustrative. We may do some further analysis on this segmentation, and that may tweak some of these categories, but we don't expect it, but we ask for that flexibility because the first time we're doing a bill credit for all customers. We have done bill credit so far for low-income customers, residential low-income customers. So so residential would get their proportionate share, the portion of load they are to our total load, they would get their proportionate share, and likewise for all of these other customer segments. So remember, this is on average, right? So if you're the average customer, you get just about the right amount. If you're below average usage, you get if we set a bill credit, you're getting a little bit more. If you're higher usage, you're getting a little bit less. For residential, there's not that much variability. There is some variability, but we think from a messaging and marketing perspective, when one neighbor is comparing their credit to another neighbor, rather than break out the calculator, it's easy to say, hey, we all got $48. But for business class, non-residential customers, that may not make sense. And what we're asking is for flexibility pending further analysis, that we make it, on a historical usage basis at least, proportionate to the, for that customer load, proportionate to that customer's load, to that segment load. So that they're on a historical usage basis, they're getting the proportionate share of the bill credit. That makes sense? Okay. Here we've shown it flat, but we were asking for that flexibility, and we're going to do some more analysis. And we've heard that at least one other CCA has taken a similar approach for non-res customers. And again, as the note there says, we will promote this bill credit through marketing and other marketing channels. Okay, so now...
just a question from Director Showalter.
Maybe this is trivial, but is it possible, would it create a lot of trouble to raise this to 50 instead of 48? It just sounds a lot better. I don't know.
These are not... We will do this calculation when we get closer to that August. So again, we have that, and we will take that into account. We have that 2 million cushion.
Yeah.
We will work with that to do what makes sense and still stay within the authority the board is giving us today.
Well, that's great. And we did have quite a discussion about this in the Finance Committee, and we really cared that people could see it. You know, if you divide this $48 by 12 months, it's $4. You know, nobody's going to notice that in their bill. And we want to send the message that we're saving you some money, that we're doing a good job. So we felt like putting it all together sent that message better. And so that's why when I say the $50 versus 48, it just sounds better to me. But you're right. It depends on how the math really works out. So thank you.
Okay, so now I turn to staffing. I touched on this.
Another question, Director Barbadillo?
Yes, while we're here in the bill credit, so we currently have 4% discount. Is that across the board for the consumer?
For all customers. And then the low-income customers get the $17.50 bill credit on top, which brings their discount something like 27-28%.
Okay.
As
And
opposed to
these
4%.
Bill credit that we're talking about, it's only to eligible consumers, not all.
I'm sorry?
The bill credit that we're talking about, the 33 million, it's just for eligible consumers, not across the board.
It's for all our customers.
Okay.
And I think I know what you're coming at. In my staff report, I use the word eligible.
Yes.
There's a very small subset of customers that we have custom pricing arrangements. Per those arrangements, this is a very small subset. Those customers are not eligible because they're under a special pricing arrangement.
All right, so the small subset will benefit from this 33 million?
No, all our customers will benefit, but it's a very small number of non-residential customers that are on custom pricing deal arrangement. Per the terms of that arrangement, they're not eligible. They've never have been of our general discount, even the 4% we don't give to them.
Do we have a percentage of that small subset that will not benefit from this?
Right now, I believe, Peyton, you correct me, we only have one customer. Yeah, and we cannot talk about customers in public based on confidentiality rules.
Right, because what I'm thinking is instead of doing the bill credit, as Director Pat had mentioned, we want to send the message. Why not just put across the board 10%, distribute your 33 million with 6% on top of the current discount? Would that be far different in value?
Now, the value on an expected basis is the same, it's $33 million.
Right.
So we can either give them as a full 10% volumetric discount, or we can do a 1% bill credit, as Director Showalter talked about. That $4 is going to be lost in messaging, and it's not going to be very impactful, as opposed to getting a $48 or $50 credit in the month when you're facing the highest electricity bill. So on an expected basis, it's the same. And I'm asking for little $2 million cushion because of the way the governance works. I cannot spend more than what the board, we cannot spend more than what the board grants us. So, but that's not to take away from the messaging. We are giving on an expected basis the same amount.
All right, just my thought. If we're doing this for messaging, making sure that they feel what we do here and we're giving back to them, 10% may be longer term than a one-time. Who knows if we still have money next year, right? For another bill credit for an August month. Other than assuring them it may not be 10%, but a little over 4, yes, you won't feel it because it's just $2 or $3 a month. But the long-term message will be there that there is a discount, and they will feel it in the long term.
Yeah, the bill credit or whether it's a bill credit, one-time bill credit, or a discount would only be for this year. So we're not proposing future bill credits or an extended discount beyond this year. That would be another board decision when we bring the budget later in August, September. So this is a one-time thing.
Yeah, we're only asking for approval for amendment to this year's budget.
Right. The amendment is about 98.1 million from what we have approved last September of 2024. And if you're looking at the bill credit, that's about 35% of it. And is that what we anticipate in the next few years? We spend for a one-time credit instead of trying to figure out what's a long-term return to the consumers. That's just my thing. Again, as I said, I'm new. I think that idea is.
Let me suggest that you finish the presentation and that we look at this and then take the discussion overall, because my understanding is, just from what I've seen here as well as the slides, is I wouldn't use the word windfall, but because of things this year, we have more contribution to reserves than we expect to have in the future. We expect a deficit going forward. I frankly, I look and I think the Finance and Administration Committee, which I'm not a member of, has done an outstanding job of looking at how do we make this visible to people, protect our interests long term, put it in the right month, and in a simplified administrative sort of way, get that back to people and not tie our hands, because it's very hard to have our discount yo-yo back and forth every time. Because I have to say, was it 3 years ago we were running a strong deficit? I remember September 6, 2022, when we lost, $12 million in one day? So anyway, we have some history, I might have that wrong a little bit, of volatility, and I think that we're seeing a process here to manage that without meaning to dominate the conversation. I think I'd like to get through the presentation, and then we'll come back.
That's fine, dear. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now I'm turning to staffing, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. Again, as I said, when we did the annual budget, we said we were going to revisit this in the mid-year because of the optimization we were doing. Mm-hmm. And now we're coming back and we're asking for 5 positions. And the core message here is we have done well building the organization up, filling key positions, but we cannot run it on a thin margin. We have to have bench strength, we have to have business continuity, and we have to have depth within the organization, right? Which means providing existing staff opportunity to grow into higher level positions as they are gaining skills and experiences, and bringing some of the still core functions that we outsource in-house, which is more cost effective and better for managing the organization. We retain the institutional knowledge, and it's core to our business. And then we enable these new commerce to come in and provide the bench strength that we need. So we don't want to run the organization too thin. So that's the theme of these 5 positions. And very quickly, I'll go through them. There's 2 in the customer success area. One is for the energy lead position, looking at all the demand flexibility programs that we are launching with our customers, where the customers can flex based on prices, based on devices that they have. We're looking at a senior energy analyst specialist position. This is in the area of pursuing the state funding for energy efficiency, directing that better for our community. And again, this position it's not just that, but will also create bandwidth for our staff, some of the existing staff for some other program areas that we have going on. The other is in the regulatory and policy planning area. We want to bring one resource planner. Again, this will allow some of the existing staff to focus on that higher strategic level planning, some of which we outsource, and bringing more of that in-house and retaining that institutional knowledge. In the finance and administration team, this has to do with the data analyst position. One of the things we did in the reorg is we have consolidated all our data management in one area in finance under Scott Rigglesworth. So this is all our data, and we are building a central data repository, central data hub, moving away from spreadsheets, making sure that disparate data systems are integrated. We're bringing some in-house consulting, some external consulting to help with this process, but we want a bulk of that to be done with existing staff who can move into this position, again, creating this opening at the lower level. In the power procurement and planning area, this also includes actually risk management. We're looking for a rotational analyst, and this is done in this area in most of the companies because it's a very technical area. You cannot always find people and resources you need when a vacancy occurs. You want that depth of training, and we will take this person through front, middle, back office, which also includes finance department, as well as the power procurement in the industry jargon, front, middle, and back office functions. So the person gets the training, and again, taking on the day-to-day, allowing others to take on higher level work and bring some of the portfolio evaluation that we outsource in-house as well. So that's the theme of these positions. We do request them, and we do need them. And that will improve our efficiency as well as effectiveness going forward. So that sort of brings the end of my presentation. As I always leave you with this picture, we need those reserves. Once they're gone, we are not getting them back. And when that stress test occurs and we're seeing elements of that stress test unfolding, our director of risk, Scott, was saying, hey, we're starting to see the stress test in the forward projections that we're seeing with prices coming down, as you know, with the PCIA and how that mechanism works. And we're working on the regulatory side to address the PCIA, and that will be probably a future discussion. So yeah, many risks are out there. We need the reserves, they're important. Some of what's to look forward to is we are going to be bringing financial stress test analysis. We may do some additional analysis in addition to financial stress test. We will have more discussions on that later. This will go to the finance and probably executive committee in May. We'll bring it to the board in June, which will then update the reserve policy. Then we will, as we do every year, we'll have a draft budget. We'll review it at the Finance and Admin Committee in August. This is, again, next fiscal year now, not this one. And then we will bring it to the board and we'll take your comments, feedback, and then give you the final budget to approve in September so that we have an approved budget when we start our new fiscal year on October 1st. That's the presentation. I can take questions, and I have a lot of information in the appendix. I hope you've had a chance to look at them, as well as in the staff report, and also happy to take questions on any of that material as well.
Great, thank you. Let's start with questions. Let's start with Director Walia.
It's a very easy question, but I need to preface it with a couple of comments. So I want to start with a comment that Chair Tyson mentioned earlier. Amrit stays where he is. I'm going to add 2 words with SVCE.
It's a fabulous presentation, very well put together, explained beautifully, and it's good to see how you're managing the extreme level of volatility with a long list of variables that we are constantly having to deal with. So great job, Amrit. Thank you. And I really liked your slide number 6 with the 2 bar charts, the bars, because they really completely convey the picture of what's happening. A big thanks to the Finance and Administrative Committee for having worked through this. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, there is an opening there. I think it would be good for a member of the board to join that. I shouldn't say this, but I think there are 5 slots. There are 6 positions open. That's a great committee. I have served on it. The reason I especially bring that up right now is this committee with 5 members have done such a stellar job of managing to figure out where the $35 million need to go. And I'm leading up to a question there, because they could have easily said specific cases, percentage per month, but I am very impressed with the solution of, for especially the residential customers, giving one specific or whatever big amount in the month of August. The question is, there will be confusion amongst some residents exactly with that. If you have so much money to spare to give me $48, $45, $50 in 1 month of the year, why are you charging me so much? So have we, I don't need the answer. I understand the answer. Have we thought about some messaging? That's the question. As I said, easy question, really.
We have, and I have a team behind me in Justin with Pam. They're already working on press releases and how they're gonna market this message and also manage the questions that will come along. So that's all in the works.
Okay, wonderful. Because we don't want that residents come up with that question and take away too much staff time over a situation where we're actually giving money back. So again, great job. Amrit, stay where you are with SVC.
Great. Director Scozola?
Yeah, I'm glad Director Walia brought that exact thing up, because we did discuss a little bit about messaging. And so hopefully there can be something besides just the bill itself, and maybe a mailer or something that we can think of that will make sure that every household understands how amazing this is, how huge a discount this is. So even if they don't notice on the bill, I'm hoping that we can get some kind of, PR campaign out there so that our customers really understand what we're doing for them. And maybe more than just a discount, but we're always trying to educate and let them know that we're an amazing organization doing the best things for them possible.
Thank you, Director. Anybody on this? Director Rennie.
Thank you, Chair. So the discussion with Director Barbadillo made me realize I don't know what 10% volume discount means. I think that was adding to some confusion there. I thought I heard if we gave all our customers a 1% discount over the year, that's about $33 million. So if we really wanted to give them a 10% discount, we'd have to multiply by 6, and it would cost us $180 million or something. I don't know where the numbers are, but I think that there might be some confusion in there that around that.
So the 6% additional, if we were to give them the 6% additional, taking the 4% to 10%, that's the 33 million. So it's about $5.5 million at 4%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Anybody over here? Question? Director Shannon, and then we'll do Director Barbadillo.
Thank you, Chair Tyson. So I have a question about the residential discount. What is kind of on average the residential bill? I know it can be a wide range, but I'm just wondering how significant is the $50 for most of the customers?
Yeah, so average residential bill is about $200 a month. Carefara is actually less than $100. I have a slide here.
Okay. Not yet.
So here's the bill typical bill. The Carefera is actually, for comparison purposes, we're using the same usage as that of average residential customer, but their actual usage is about 11% lower than average residential. So they're, even though we're showing their bill, average total cost of about $100 there, and residential customers at non-Carefera residential customers at about $200. Their actual is less than $100 because their usage is lower on average for average customer.
Okay, so for most residential customers, it's going to be a significant part of their bill to have the $50 credit.
For that 1 month when they see that $50, but as you can see, the 4% is only $3, right? So it does otherwise, and the $4 a month that if we were to give them, it's not going to be meaningful. But if when they see that $58 or $50 in that 1 month, and that happens to the month where the bills are higher.
And then another question on your schedule that breaks down what people are going to get. Can you explain what the business electric vehicles is and why they're getting $9,600?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I asked for the flexibility. So this is a class or segment with not that many customers in it, and there's a lot of variability. So that's why I said, give us some flexibility. We may change these designations or delineate them further. And that was one of the ones we had in mind. We may break that further into small, medium, and large to make that distribution more equitable.
What is it? I don't understand what it is.
These are electric vehicles that commercial customers have as opposed to residential EV rates.
So they have to have a fleet of a certain number to consider it in that category?
Right. And Peyton, am I saying anything wrong?
Rates? Oh, now it is. BEV is a class of rates that is a dedicated meter for electric vehicle charging. So most of the customers that we have are charging stations, whether outside of a business, in parking lots of facilities, but they're very specifically and only for charging of EVs.
Okay, so only charging of EVs that they own, not like their employees' electric vehicles or...
So most commonly, these rates are held by companies that install EV chargers as a business.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, Director Barbadillo?
If we can put a dollar amount on the adjustment of the budget for this mid-year, how much would that be?
I'm sorry.
So we are doing a mid-year adjustment. How much is that in dollar amount?
So here's the budget. You can see the line items and the delta between the two budgets. So the actual change is a slight increase to a contribution to reserves of $1.3 million.
So the approved budget is 96.7, and the mid-year adjusted budget comes to 98.057.
Yeah, that's the bottom line net revenues or contribution. I would have to add all these expense numbers. The expense amount, I think, for this budget is something like $426 million. If I were to add each of these expense items on the media adjusted budget, like power expense obviously is the biggest one, plus operating, and then some of these other expenses at the bottom.
All right, I understand the expenses, but this is for the public. So we are adding additional budget, operating or for whatever we're going to account that on this mid-year adjustment from what we have, what this board have approved in September of 2024, right? So how much is that? How much adjustment are we making?
I think I understand.
Right.
So when the board adopts a budget, it adopts several things. It adopts what our discount's going to be, what our expenses are going to be, and how much we're going to either put into reserves or take out of reserves. In this case, we're feeding reserves. When they adopted the budget, the assumption was that we were going to put 96.7 million into reserves. Now the mid-year adds an additional 1.3, so we're asking for them to adjust the budget to return 98.057 to reserves. That's the ask, is to add more into reserves than we had previously thought.
That's the adjustment?
That's the adjustment of 1.3, so that the amount returning is 98.057 into reserves.
Okay, so out of that 98, this is what portion of that is the 33 million that we're talking about. Portion of that is the compensation for the 5 FTEs and some more costs. Is that where it goes?
I think that's in the table that you had before.
It's showing right now.
You can see the 35 is circled, and the 5 staffing is built into the operating expense line. You can see the 7.8% increase, the 2.8 million. That's where the staffing number is, along with some other changes. And a lot of these were also detailed in your staff report. In the staff report, a lot of them were detailed there as well.
I'm just pointing it out for the public. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think it's in the table with the pluses and minuses too, that the details there as well. Yeah.
Okay. I think if this would be a good point to return it to the public for any questions or comments. Do we have any speakers? Yeah, okay, we'll come back.
Yes, hello. Thanks for the chance to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is spending money on programs versus giving money back to the ratepayers. That $35 million is about the salary of all the employees of this organization for 2 years. So you could double the size of the organization for 2 years for $35 million. Gosh, think of all the things they could do to incentivize heat pump adoption. Think also about the email that I sent to all of you a month or so ago, pointing out that the carbon curve has not been bent in SVCE territory. In fact, carbon emissions in our territory are higher now than they were before the pandemic. So if the mission of this organization truly is to bend the carbon curve, I would love to hear how giving $50 to each residential customer and a larger amount to the non-residential customers is going to cause a behavior change that will show up in the emissions inventories. I'm afraid I don't believe there will be such a change, and therefore I believe that this is a terrible misallocation of $35 million. I know that once the Finance and Administration Committee approves this and brings it to the board, the chances are very slim that a negative vote will be taken. But I appeal to the alternate directors who perhaps are not as drinking the Kool-Aid to say this doesn't seem right, and at the very least, we need to think about this for another month. I'm fine if you adopt the budget without the $35 million and think about it a little bit longer. It's twice as much money as you're spending on staff in a year. It's a big number. You shouldn't really do things in a hasty manner. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Bruce. Do we have any other public comments?
No additional comments, Chair.
Let's return it back now to the board, and we have, I think, Director Klein, would you like to go, and then Director Rennie?
Sure. I did have some questions about the illustrative bill credit again, so we can pull up that slide. I appreciated the clarification. Most of those categories I understood. Can you clarify standby, street lighting, and traffic control, and how that plays as far as customer is concerned?
I'm going to ask Peyton to do. Standby basically is people, I think, have their own self-generation, and whenever they need to tap into the grid. Peyton?
Okay. One second.
I will hold on. Test. Street lighting and traffic control accounts are mostly held by the municipalities and other government agencies.
And so for those, is it per street light? So I'm trying to get a better idea of how that's billed, just as a question. I assumed as much. But, for the traffic control and, from that standpoint,
So it would be determined by the size of the city and how many lights that they have. You can operate more than one set of traffic control or street lights per meter. But to put it in perspective, some of the larger cities represented by the board members here may have upwards of 350 electrical accounts. They don't necessarily have 350 buildings, and the majority of those will be dedicated to streetlights.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Director Rennie?
Yeah, Bruce reminded me of a question I wanted to make sure I understood. One of the things we changed this year, I think it is, we got far off of our clean target because some resources were extremely expensive to buy, and well, we were told we couldn't buy them, but I think money can buy anything, actually, if we wanted to spend ridiculous amounts of money. So instead of spending the $35 million, we might want to make sure next year we're not going to get far off our clean target, but I think we may already have that covered, but I just want to check before we give the money back. Let's see, where is our clean target for next year going to be?
Yeah, so we're pretty much on track. We executed a transaction a couple of months ago based on our board approval to enter into I think it was a 5-year transaction for some nuclear energy. And so that got us a lot of the way there. And then tonight, you actually approved a transaction with East Bay Municipal Utility District for a 5-year contract to buy some small hydro that is eligible for renewable portfolio standard. So essentially, we're at about between 97 and 100% of what we need to achieve to get to 100% clean for those years. And then we can still, we're still buying some stuff and still bringing some resources online. So we're in really good shape relative to where we were last year. Thank you.
That sounds really good. So if I could have the second question then more to Mr. Carney's question. So when I look at our days of cash on hand, slide number 6, it shows we got a lot in our programs fund right now is the way I kind of read that, and we're spending it down, and even next year it's not all spent down. The question then kind of becomes, when do we need to put more money into that fund? The way I look at this, you must be expecting to put some in the 26-27, and how risky is it? Will we not have money to put into it at that point?
We definitely look at that every budget year. As you know, this already takes into account putting at least 2% of our revenues per the board resolution that we have for each of the future years. That's already taken into account of adding 2% of our revenues, additional amounts towards programs. And the board may put more money set aside, and as we do when we bring each year's fiscal budget.
Thank you.
Great. Director Walia?
2 follow-up questions to that. I'll go in reverse order. The question that Director Rennie just asked, and your response is the minimum 2% additional revenue every year. We also revisit the discount given every year, the 4% that we have had currently. So that's the other variable that plays, correct?
Correct.
And you feel comfortable, I just assumed this, that you feel comfortable recommending the $35 or $33 million return, that hopefully, even though we have that buffer within that 4%, but essentially reducing discount, that's not quite the approach we have at SVC. So you are comfortable, but that is the back end in our pocket if we need to use that.
So the projection, in the 5-year projection, for next year we have discounted 4%, but the years after that it's at 1%. And the reason is we generally model 1% because that's how we do the stress test analysis, that we want to reserve. If we did it at 4%, the stress test number, the days cash on hand will go higher than 350. So we do it at 1% to remain competitive with PG&E, because as I said, we have 2/3 of our load are very sensitive, price sensitive C&I customers. And the reason next year we had kept it at 4% is because we can still meet the target, 350 days. And if you remember last fiscal year when we brought the budget to the board, the board at that time had said we had set aside more money for programs in addition to the 2%. I think I can't forget the exact number, but it's around 30 million, 20 million, something like that. But the board also said plan to 4% for 2 additional years. So was this year and next fiscal year. So that we carried that plan forward in the forecast. But again, we will obviously revisit each year depending on how the numbers look like. Even next year, if 4% doesn't make sense and 1% makes sense, we'll do that. If more than 4% makes sense, the board will have that opportunity.
Okay. And the other part is, because I have been thinking, based on the comments about the 33 or 35 million, whatever we call it, what else can we do? Right now, the days cash on hand right now is 396. And so we also don't want to keep too much reserves, because that's been another point brought forward by one of the directors. So it's kind of that fine balance. Is that what I'm understanding?
It is a balance, and that's a projection for where we will end the fiscal year at September 30th, 2025. And you remember the board has created the Clean Community Fund. Mm-hmm. So the board has that option not to give the discount and put the money into the Clean Community Fund, where a portion goes towards future rate relief, portion goes towards our additional emphasis on programs, and there's also a portion set aside for customer response and generation type activities, generation type activities we may do on the customer side, or local generation, if I remember correctly. So the board has that option, and when we bring the budget next year, likely it will be in the December timeframe. That's when we know our finances much better. We'll do all the other updates in September. But in the December timeframe, we'll make that decision. Should we up the discount for the next calendar year? Should we put more money towards the Clean Community Fund, or should we give more rate relief to customers?
Okay, thank you. Very, very helpful. One very quick question going back and follow up to Vice Chair's question on the street lighting and traffic control. So Peyton responded that one city, a large city, could have, say, 300 accounts, obviously not 300 buildings. So the dollar amount here, the $80 per street lighting or the traffic control 43, is that per traffic control signal street lighting or total? I'm just not clear what this line item reads.
I'm going to answer, but Peyton can correct me. It's per meter. It's per customer meter.
Per meter.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Director Showalter?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit to Mr. Carney's comment, because I think these are things that we balance, and it's a good question. We do want to do whatever we can to increase the or decrease the amount of GHG emissions in our region. That's what we're here to do. We're also have made a promise to the community that we think we can do this at the same or less price than PG&E. That was also part of the promise. So I think that the discount is part of our promise. But on top of that, one of the things that we asked in the Finance Committee was, do we have enough money to run all the programs already? And we were told that that money had already been allocated. But my question on top of that is, have we ever run out of rebate money? I mean, what happens if we run out of rebate money? Would you come to us and say, there are more people who want to do this? And so can you allocate some more money? Can we move some reserves? How would that work?
So that has not been the case that I know of. Justin, you can correct me, but absolutely, we can always come to the board, and we give reports in our board package on our programs updates, so you have access to that information. And Justin's here, so I'll turn it to him. I think you still start talking. It kicks on.
Nope. Not on yet.
Keep talking.
Keep.
Hello? No. Oh, there we are. All right. So yes, it actually has happened a couple times where we've come back, particularly for our what we currently call the home rebates program, which is kind of the longest running rebate program that we have, where we ran out of the original budget, or we didn't run out. We came to you before we ran out to say, hey, we have more unallocated programs, funds available that come every year as we add more money to the budget for programs. And we said we'd like to take a portion of that and put it towards this program. So the board has approved that, I think, multiple times in the past, just as part of the standard program allocation. So that's what we would do, kind of if we're forecasting that we're going to start running out of funds on a program that we would like to continue. Sometimes we may run out of funds on a program that we feel has run its course and it's time to let it close. And then certainly, yes, right now, as we discussed in the F&A committee, we do have sufficient funding for the programs that we have budgeted. The board is discussing kind of the balancing act there of these different priorities. I think as we have done, as the board has put more funding towards programs, we have increased staffing, we have done other things to try to ramp up our spending. And as Amrit shared, the sort of forecast that we have into the next couple of years reflects our ability to spend down the current budget that we have in place.
That's great. I really like that. I know, I'm always giving water analogies, so here's another one. There's a turf buyback program that's been in the works for, 20 years now. And there have been years when we ran out of money. And people were told that it was just too bad. You didn't get in the first 600 people or whatever it was. And then they fixed the program. And that was really good because by having it run out, you really disincentivized people to use the program. And we don't want to disincentivize anybody. So I would just, it's just my feeling anyway, that if we have a rebate program and it's going gangbusters and it is, it's more than we've allocated, I hope you'll ask us about it. And because that we really want to, we don't want to disincentivize these activities. We want to encourage people every way we can. Thank you.
And I'll just say the intent of the community fund, as well as Amrit covered, is in part to make sure that we continue to have budget as the board sees fit to allocate funds into that, to really continue to scale up on some of the areas that the community needs most support.
Thank you. Director Meadows, and then Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate Mr. Carney's comment, and I think it gets to the crux of what sometimes I think we struggle with. One is the invisibility versus the visibility of where we invest our financial resources. So we've had lots of conversations about how a 1% or 2% or 4% discount to PG&E is part of our commitment, as Director Showalter said, and to some extent that means it's obviously part of our mission, but it's not that impactful. I mean, we're keeping our word, but it doesn't make a difference necessarily much. And I do appreciate the Finance Administration Committee proposing a lump sum that it's the same as whatever, $4 a month for a year, but you can see it more. So I understand that, and that's the invisibility versus visibility. But I wonder how that really impacts, and this I think is where maybe Mr. Carney was going, the motion or the progress we make for greenhouse gas reductions, and the core of our mission, what we're trying to achieve. And have we ever looked at our expenditures? Because even the programs, sorry, Justin, even the programs are to some extent invisible to anybody who hasn't used them, right? And so I don't know what proportion of our customers actually avail themselves of our programs. The ones who do are probably very happy. Occasionally we've had a disgruntled one because they didn't get the rebate without really fighting or something. But, so what proportion, to the proportion who use a program, it's visible, but to the rest of the majority, it's not. So, but invisibility or visibility is potentially a minor goal, but it's not our mission. So the mission is the carbon, and I think that's where, or the reduction of. And so have we ever looked at carbon reduction per dollar invested? So if we look at whether it be staff, whether it be programs, whether it be discount, I personally don't like the rate discounts that much. I understand there's a core principle we're going to meet or beat PG&E, but I've used in the past the example in our city where we essentially subsidized sewer rates for like 5 years, and nobody understood that. But when we charged them the real amounts, they were really mad, right? And so if you don't see something, you don't know if you're getting a gift or you're entitled to it or what. So I would like to understand kind of and maybe I'm misinterpreting Mr. Carney's, but he's really saying, where can we get the most carbon bang for our buck? And we've not looked at the investment return in that regard. Again, we're balancing mission, commitment, et cetera. So do we know really what moves our, our core mission the most? And I don't think we do, and maybe it's kind of a speech more than a question. It's a little bit of a question. Sorry, Chair. There, good.
Go ahead, Justin. Turn that speech into
an
answer.
It's a good speech and a good question. So we do look at the dollar per GHG. There's a lot of other ways to look at this metric across our program portfolio. I think I've talked about this before. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to evaluate a program based on that, and sometimes it doesn't. And so there's different programs that we run for different purposes. We certainly can kind of look and share and talk about, if you run a heat pump water heater rebate program or this type of program based on what we're seeing, using $35 million, what would we do with that? It's still going to be a fairly small fraction of the overall portfolio of water heaters that are out there, but it will be much more meaningful than what we've reached today. That will take time to spend. So there's all of these pieces. I think that a rate discount or a one-time bill credit, it's hard to say that it has any direct, immediate, or will ever cause a GHG reduction, because that's not really the objective that it's trying to serve. And so I think you've called that out correctly, that's the balancing question here.
Thank you. So I just wanted to sort of put it in that framework. Sorry, Chair,
All right.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Director Lee.
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank you, Chair, and thank you for the Budget Committee. Those of you to come up with this very, I think, kind of a bit of an ingenious proposal. I certainly fully support the 10% one-time discount, which is very thoughtful and fiscally responsible, while maintaining the 4% discount still moving forward. So there's only a one-time thing. And see, when we have a large surplus, it really reflects that SVCE has managed our expenses well, and that we can return that from that money to our customers. And that's important goodwill that SVCE will gain by doing this. And I think in that sense, I think more customers appreciate who we are, and that more, if they are not with us, yes, they will want to come to us. I do think that there's a huge threat on climate risk, but that risk is not our decision right here. The threat is really from the chaos created by the new federal government, the drill baby drill, pushing for more coal mining, et cetera, and the EPA leadership that I stated earlier. That's what we really have a huge problem with, and we need to work on. Right now, we could see there's a lot of confusion and little trust to large institutions, and we really need to let our customer, giving them the comfort that SVCE is a reliable company, that our rate is always lower than PG&E, right? That's a good moniker we need to have, and then we will even give money back to people when we can. Now, August being the hottest month is when the electric bills are going to be highest, and so this proposed credit is most meaningful at that time. So for those reasons, I fully support it, and I'd like to make a motion to support this recommendation. If this is the right time, Chair? Or?
Almost. I'll keep you in mind, though. Let me You know, I'm just been itching to talk so long, and so Director Scazola, if you just bear me a moment here, I just do want to say that I really think it's a very thoughtful process here, and one of the things I want to remind us, at the danger of reminding you stuff you already know, and that is, we have several pillars we rely on, and we need all of them to work. So, we need to be clean, which includes converting people to clean electricity. We need to be reliable. If we're not reliable, and that's why we're paying money on resource adequacy, and that's why we saw this surge that kind of messed things up. And we need to be affordable. Those things are all in conflict with each other. So if it's a balancing act, that's what we're here to do. We're here to make those decisions about what those balances are. And so just coming back to this proposal, one of the things I like about it that we didn't say was by having this fixed annual rebate in August, I think we like that timing of year. If you're an energy hog, that fixed dollar amount is much smaller to you. If you're already lean and tight, it's a more significant number. If you're a low income person, more than likely you have lower usage, and this is a more, so this, I kind of like the hidden affordability bump this gives to us too. And I think, I trust our staff to come up with the ways to create the goodwill and get the word out that will make that more apparent, that that's kind of the rest of our target here. So with that, I'll ask Director Scazola.
That was perfect. I appreciate you saying those words because, as you had mentioned earlier, Chair Tyson, you had mentioned we had quite a windfall year. And this is what I see as a really unique and rare opportunity for us to have a 10% discount. So my question would be, have we ever had a year good enough to allow for a 10% discount? And how likely are we to see a year like this again? Because I see it as something that we should jump on if we have the moment.
This is a good fiscal year. It's coming off of a fiscal year that ended with the last two fiscal years that ended that were very well. And then not long ago, I think it was 2-3 years ago when we actually lost like $15-16 million. So this is a good, and if in the future projection I showed you, the 5-year, next year we're going to be negative something like 36 million, and then negative again the following year after that, and then slightly positive the remaining 2 years. But if you look at the reserve projections, we still intend to be, we still show that we're going to be good. Our liquidity and our reserves will still be good if the projections prevail. We will still be close to 350 days of cash on hand.
Right, and do you know offhand what the highest discount ever provided was before this potential 10%?
I think this is the highest. Remember, this is more like giving back 11%, so I always want to remind that. But I think Pam in our audience probably knows this answer.
6%, okay. So 6%, so great. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that again, and that this might be the year. We can always go back, and we do review this on a yearly basis, but on the Finance Committee, we felt like we should really take advantage of this opportunity. We might not have it again for who knows how long. And especially since we've been talking a lot about the affordability issues, and people are struggling. It seems every day it gets a bit harder for a huge segment of our populace. And this 10%, it might not sound like much, but it is huge to our customers, and especially if we combine this with a real PR campaign of some kind that I trust staff with, this could really do wonders for our organization. I believe wholeheartedly in this. I support 100%.
Right, thank you. I think we were just about to get a motion. Director Franz, give me some.
Yeah, so I really appreciate this idea of sort of smoothing out the cost by targeting August. But I did want to build on a comment that Director Meadows made about, visibility versus invisibility. So one of the things that somewhat concerns me here is that if the discount is applied to that month specifically, will everyone notice it at that point in time?
Because it's big?
Will it be big enough for people to really see it, right? If your average bill is just much higher in August, will it all be consumed by that discount? And I don't think that the average person pays enough attention to their bill on a monthly basis to be expecting in August that it's going to be higher to that degree. So I just wanted to put that out there. Is that really the best month to target? Would it maybe be more valuable to hit it, say, September, the month immediately after, and say, oh, look, we got you a much bigger discount? Just a thought.
I don't know. Was there anybody else? I think we'll just hold that thought, I guess.
Do you have a question?
I did think of that, when we were planning it. So that thought did go through my mind. So I appreciate that comment.
I think I'm ready to entertain a motion by Director Lee. And by the way, Director Lee, when you make that motion, it's implied that we are giving conceptual general advice to staff to the tune of $35 million to apply a fair, because we're not defining each of these rates. We all appreciate that. So we're giving the staff some latitude, but the dollar is what we're authorizing. And with that, now, why don't you make your motion?
Yes, motion to adopt resolution approving the mid-year 24-25 adjusted operating budget.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Yes.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Fruin?
Aye.
Meadows? Rennie?
Aye.
Barbadillo?
Me.
Shannon?
Yes.
Carruthers?
Yes.
Showalter?
Yes.
Walia?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
Director Hilton?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Great, thank you. Really good discussion. And boy, what do they call this? One of those problems, good problems to have, So let's move on, though, to item number 5, affordability strategy focus area update. Take it away, Justin.
I have to put my thing out so you know who I am. Good evening. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Yes, so tonight, I know it's been a long evening already, and so we're going to try to move quickly through this, though it is a really important topic, and one we were sort of just talking about a little bit already. Affordability. I'm joined tonight by Peyton Parks, who is the lead of our team that does all things billing, among other things, and so he's very relevant to the discussion tonight, as well as Michaela Pippin, who is our communications manager, and who also helps lead some of the efforts that we're going to be talking through. So they're here to help me answer some questions, as well as to ensure that you don't just hear me talk through this tonight. So with that, goal for tonight is to go through a little bit of background and context, and then highlight some of SVCE's activities on this topic. So this is, I kind of view this as the next step from our August study session. For those of you who were here, you will remember we did talk about affordability in a special study session in August. That one was maybe a little bit more focused on background and context, and this one still touches on some of that as a refresher, but is intended to look more kind of towards what we've been doing and what we have planned. I also want to note that affordability is something that's really personal to people. It's dependent on your situation. There's a lot of statistics and facts that are hard to know about someone. So we're going to be talking in some generalities, but it is really individual by individual. So the Affordability Strategic Focus Area, or SFA, is something that the board adopted in this most recent fiscal year. We kind of talked about it in 3 main areas: the education and outreach, advocacy, and then rate setting and programs. And so today we're going to go a little bit deeper into some of those pieces. Affordability is obviously really important to our customers. It's a key part of SVCE's mission, as we were talking about, along with balancing against providing clean and reliable energy, as well as decarbonizing buildings and transportation in our communities through our programs. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Peyton to walk through some of the background.
Great, thank you. So in order to... Hello. Great.
So in order to set a foundation for talking about affordability, it's important, I think, first to start with a discussion of price, and specifically the retail price for electricity that customers pay. So what we've charted for you here on this slide, on the gray line is the bundled price for electricity from 2019 to current in 2025. And so since 2019, we've all experienced a 90% increase in the total bundled rate. Now below that line, we've broken it into its component parts. So generation, which is SVC's portion of the bill, has increased a bit, and it's influenced by movements of the wholesale electricity market. But the blue line is transmission and distribution. These are the portions of the bill that PG&E are in charge of, and during this time, they've more than doubled. So here we've taken that bundled rate for electricity, and we've drilled down and broken it into its component pieces. Now, separated out to the right, you can see that 2/3 of the total rate is actually this portion that PG&E is fully in control of. This 67% contains transmission and distribution, which we talk about quite a bit. It also contains PCIA, which we hear of fairly often. It also contains public purpose programs as a smaller portion, as well as other non-bypassable charges. So an example of a public purpose program would be like energy efficiency or dollars to support income qualified customers on the Care or Fair program. Non-bypassable charges are the things like wildfire mitigation that we've been hearing about recently. Now over to the left, this smaller third is the portion of the rate that SVCE can affect. This is 33% of the total rate for generation. Now within that 33%, we have a discount that we offer to customers, and then we also have costs as an agency that we have to support. And so it's difficult to solve the affordability problem when we think about just offering a customer discount. So to further drive this point home, I'm going to propose a thought experiment where if we take the third of this portion, SVC's portion, and set that rate to 0. And it is just a thought experiment because Amrit said we could not do this. We would still be left with about 30 cents worth of PG&E transmission and distribution. And this by itself is higher than the other municipal agencies who neighbor us in Palo Alto or in City of Santa Clara, or even at SMUD in Sacramento. And their rates, depending on the season, can range from about 13 to 22 cents in total. And it's a bit of a double whammy for customers who have gas service at their home as well. This chart shows that since 2016, the price of residential gas has also increased about 50%. So what we've done for you in this chart is in the middle column, we've organized customers' average energy bill, and we're considering the energy bill to be both electricity and gas portions of a total bill. And we've arranged it in descending order by socioeconomic vulnerability. Now, when we look at some of those totals, it answers some of the questions that we heard earlier on. That customers on average are paying between $253 at the low end and $381 for their total energy bill. Now, when we look at those totals as a proportion of the average median income within those vulnerability classes, we get the energy burden, which for SVCE territory ranges between 2.8 and 3.8%. These figures are a necessary evil that customers must pay. We also have to consider that customers in this area pay an average cost for housing that is high relative to other areas, as well as high gasoline prices for transportation. So this is a look at our territory. It's split between residential and commercial and represents all 281,000 customers that we have. Some of these smaller slices of the pie that are called out towards the bottom, 27,000 customers on care, and currently 16,000 customers who are in delinquency. This means that they're more than 60 days behind on a bill payment, and 5.9% of our customers fall into this category, which is a 50% increase from 2020. So you're not hearing tonight for the first time that electricity prices are high. These are a sampling of headlines from news articles. And so the cost of electricity in California is news statewide. People are aware of the increases. Our customers have also indicated through a survey that we conducted in 2024 that they're acutely aware. And in the top selection of the bar chart there, you can see that 92% have indicated that keeping the cost of electricity low ranks either as very important or extremely important to them. The state has also picked up on this sentiment from customers, and so they're exploring things that they can do to support affordability, not just in PG&E territory, but the other two large IOUs as well. Some of these things might include reducing wildfire mitigation costs to customers, or ensuring that solar customers are paying their fair share of non-bypassable charges. When Justin spoke earlier about affordability being experienced by customers on a spectrum, we've illustrated this chart to kind of bring that point home. So to the left, you can see that there are customers who are experiencing affordability issues in a very real and immediate way, and these would be the folks that have fallen behind on their payments. There's a larger group that ranges toward the middle of this chart who are really just frustrated with high prices that seem to continue to increase. And to the right of this chart is groups like SVCE, who are focused on making sure that electrification continues to be a scalable and feasible option for people moving into the future.
Great, thanks, Peyton. So now we're going to pivot from some of that recap of context from August and into the details of the affordability SFA. I'm going to go through some actions across all three parts of this, covering some things that we have already done or are already in place, some things that we're working on, and then there's also some exploratory things that we're kind of considering and looking at. So this is a big table. Don't try to read it right now. I just wanted to give you a sense that there are a lot of activities that we are working on and that we are tracking and have been working on. I'm going to focus on some of the ones that I've highlighted here today to kind of go into a little bit more detail. So there's a lot of breadth and there's a lot more depth even than I'm going to get into today on these highlights. So starting with promoting energy efficiency, really important. Think of, from the slide Peyton showed with that continuum of customers, the folks that are just frustrated with high energy bills. You get a bill in the mail, they open it up and you just know that it's gotten a lot larger than it used to be. You don't really know why. You don't know what action you can take, what you've done, what someone else has done. Why is this bill showing up? You just have to pay it and it's frustrating. And so we want to be there to say, here's some things you can do. You can take advantage of these programs and these offers that are available to you at no cost, things that SVCE is involved in, the DIY Home Energy Savings Toolkit, things that are available through the public purpose funds and administered by PG&E, so things like Home Intel, which will help walk customers through an understanding of how they're using energy at their home. And we've increased the presence of these energy efficiency materials across our communications. So this is now available when you search for rebates and incentives on our website. These offers pop up in addition to the electrification programs we're running. We're putting it out in social media. We're putting it out through our email newsletter blasts. We're also doing targeted outreach. So think maybe on the left side of that spectrum that Peyton showed, customers who have lower incomes or maybe most vulnerable. Could be a senior on a fixed income, could be someone who just lost their job and is now struggling to make ends meet for a stretch of time. Could be someone who has a low or moderate income and spends it all on housing and childcare because they live in this region and those costs are expensive. We are going to be doing targeted marketing to the parts of our population that we think fall in this group, trying to help them understand payment assistance that's available, trying to get them aware of that before they maybe actually need that support, helping them understand also about energy efficiency, as well as how their rate works. What are ways that they can avoid some of the higher costs? So all of these things are materials we're putting together. We are also going to try to help get eligible but not currently on Carefera discount customers onto the Carefera discount. These ads, we can only target so precisely, and so there will be some spillover as well to other groups. We think that's great. These materials are, usable and helpful to all of our customers, but we're really trying to focus some of it on these customers in the most need. Okay, moving to the advocacy side. So this is really important. As Peyton showed, the T&D part of the rate is 2/3 of what the customers pay today. And we don't have the ability to have a lot of direct control or influence over that. But advocacy is a way where we can influence that. And so there's a lot of participants in these various things, but SVC is continuing to monitor some of the bigger financial cases and increase our engagement in others. So things like the general rate case or the GRC or ERA, which honestly, I can't tell you what the acronym stands for right now. Looking at PCIA, which we talk about, some of these other cases, as well as tracking bills. So every year there's new sets of bills. How do we weigh in on those so that we can take positions that fight for lowering customer bills in sensible ways across both parts of the rate, but in particular on the T&D side, because that is the majority of what customers are paying. Moving now to rates and programs. Even though we're only representing a portion of the rate, we can create different signals with our portion to align customers with times where it's actually cheaper for SVCE to buy energy and then pass those savings on to customers. We can do that through smart technology as well that can automate and simplify this process for customers. So imagine, the folks who have EVs, someone who just installed a heat pump water heater or heat pump HVAC. The more of the energy use that's happening on electricity, the more we can kind of help customers manage and lower their energy cost. We've also incorporated energy efficiency directly into the programs that we are running. And so unlike the rebates where it's a little bit more advisory and we're sharing information about energy efficiency because we're not forcing people, we're not kind of running the installation process. For these direct install programs, we do have the relationship with the contractor. And so we have included measures like bathroom fan timers, pipe insulation, lighting retrofits, building envelope sealing, new washing machines across these various programs, trying to find ways to make sure that when we go in and we electrify, we're also doing these other things so that we're helping the home become more efficient, and we're making sure that the bill goes down even more significantly when we're done doing the work for this customer. And sorry, I should flag, this is true for our single family turnkey program where it could be someone who just wants some help going through this process. They don't really have the time to work through it themselves. But it's also for our multifamily affordable housing program where, it could be a tenant who's living there who's really looking forward to some new equipment, and we need to make sure that their bill doesn't go up as a result of the work. And then I was just alluding to this, but electrifying, the analysis that we've done shows that electrifying is affordability. When you electrify, your operating costs do go down as long as you get on a good rate and you use energy at the right time. And so there's an education piece to that, there's a rate design piece to that, there's automation side to that. But this is really important as we think about scaling this and continuing to get everybody upgraded to all electric homes. Finally, as we've already talked about tonight, returning money to customers. This is something that we do every year as part of the annual rate setting process. We've saved customers $141 million lifetime compared to what they would have paid for PG&E. And that's for residential and non-residential accounts, so including local small businesses and large corporations. As Amrit explained, we do also have the CareFera credits for our lowest income customers, which when combined with the T&D discount adds up to a really significant bill discount every month. And then tonight we discussed the additional bill credit for all customers this year. So to recap, I just want to say, as we all know, this is a really important issue for our customers, and that's why staff's been working on it. And we've been working on it before it was an SFA, but by acknowledging it as an SFA, the board really helped make sure that we could expand and continue to focus our efforts here. There's only so much that we can directly do given the part of the overall energy bill that we are, right? There's gas and electric, and then we're 1/3 of the electric. So there's the kind of direct influence is muted. But we're doing all of these other things because they are ways that we can help customers reduce bills across the board. And you, our board members, can continue to help us with this by supporting us on the advocacy actions that we identify as being sensible and things that we'd like your support on, as well as connecting your communities to our materials that we're preparing and sending out to them. And that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Justin. That was very clear. Let me see if we've got questions on the right. Is that it? Oh, on the left, we've got Director Rennie.
Thank you for the presentation. Lots of good ideas. One, again, I like to look at the big piece, which is the 67% of distribution and transmission and just little other pieces. And I look at that and I wonder how much of that is really fixed costs versus variable. And when we're talking about distribution, variable is strange because if you increase, you may need some more capital outlays. But what I'm thinking, if we increased our energy usage, electricity usage a lot in PG&E territory, would that help cover some of their fixed transmission and distribution costs? Like if they want $400 million to do some undergrounding, well, if we're buying more electricity, that's just going to get spread over more kilowatt hours sold kind of thing. If we're promoting and seeing a future where a lot more things are electrified and a lot more electric cars are being used, is that going to help this picture or make it worse? I'm guessing it would make it better, but I don't understand their fixed costs in here. Any ideas there?
I can speak generally, and then if others want to chime in, they can. But I think you're right that there are a set of fixed costs, and so if you spread them across more volume, then the per unit charge is going to be lower. So in that sense, yes, I think as we electrify, people will use a little bit more electricity. So I think it's got more to do with maybe where the additional load comes from, if it's really pulling off of customer bills and going somewhere else, or if it's sort of you're using more kilowatt hours and your per kilowatt hour cost is lower, the net effect.
What if we built a whole bunch of AI server farms in PG&E territory? That would seem like a lot more kilowatt hours to be sold that we could spread this over, for example.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Vice Chair?
Yes, and just to follow up on that, from a distribution fixed rate, PG&E isn't targeting areas. So a portion of different portions of their territories, it's all basically a flat rate across their full territory, correct? Meaning it's like, oh, if we had more generation locally, they wouldn't see a discount. They're not looking at true cost per area. They're looking at a general cost per their entire territory, correct? Yeah. When they're coming up with that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And the distribution costs are similar across different rate classes.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that and make sure that I understood what Director Rennie, or kind of a follow-on from Director Rennie. As far as the CareFera programs, is there, you look at the state budget, you look at those credits are coming from the state funding cap and trade? Is that from the budget? Well, that specific discount is, and those credits are paid through?
I believe they come out of the T&D portion of the bill.
Okay.
So there's a public purpose charge component that includes covering some of those programs.
Okay, and then as far as our outreach to those in our territory, how are we planning to target that in a more, let's say, figuring out who would fit into that income level? And I'm assuming those funds are fully, not oversubscribed, definitely undersubscribed, because we know that there's a lot more that are potentially there, but how do we find them?
Yeah, and I think our estimate is that we're at something like 80%, 70 to 80% of kind of target enrollment for the territory. If everybody was on CareFera, we'd be at 100. So we're at somewhere like 70 to 80%.
Okay.
So there's opportunity for growth there. I think the funds will be there because they scale based on the number of folks that are there. But Michaela can answer the other part of the question.
Sure.
Yes, it's a fun challenge, I guess, to identify those customers because we don't have access to income data, which is the easiest threshold for CareFera customers to be identified if they're eligible. So what we do have access to is census data. So for the campaign that Justin mentioned in his slide deck, we have looked at the census data and looked at where all of our existing CareFera customers are residing, and also looked at where all of our delinquent customers are, and we've kind of been able to build little hot spots throughout our region. So for that campaign specifically, our out-of-home ads will be focused in those areas, and then we'll be using the census data for the direct mailers, which we've estimated about 5,000 customers are going to fall into that audience group. But as Justin mentioned, there are going to be some spillover. Some of our census tracts are not. Folks living in certain census tracts may not hit the CareFera eligibility, but that's okay. Our webpage is going to also have other efficiency resources and payment assistance plan resources that hopefully they'll be able to utilize and find benefit in.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, from an outreach standpoint, multiple of our cities have basically service organizations dealing with the low income.
Mm-hmm.
Are we working directly with them to make sure that they're at least highlighting that? Sunnyvale Community Services passes out 1,500 boxes of food a week, and so is it a flyer that goes in there? And it's also the question of language base that I always worry about. If we're talking about sending a mailer to a home, whether or not we know what language they're speaking and whether or not we can even discern that easily from a billing standpoint.
Definitely, language access is a huge focus for this campaign. For that reason in particular, PG&E's data isn't always up to date on language preference per household, and so we are going to be translating our out-of-home ads in addition to the mailers and the website and all of our emails into our four primary languages for this campaign specifically. In regards to the community-based organization outreach, that's something that's on our exploratory list. We have a list of organizations that we've been able to research and see that they do provide one-time bill relief, and so we would like to reach out to them and see what support we can provide to them as part of this campaign. In addition to compiling a list of organizations and potentially facilities like senior centers where we could send this information in their preferred language or all languages.
Okay. Fantastic job. Great to hear the update. Thank you.
And I'm gonna turn that around though very quickly on you, which is to say, I think that's an ask that we would have of all of you is if there are organizations in your community that you think, hey, there could be a good fit here, let us know. Please let us know. And please, if you can, send us the right person to contact there so that we can get these materials into their hands, because I think it's a great opportunity. It's just a matter of finding them and really getting that connection in place.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Director Walia?
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Something is puzzling me here, and it could be just the lateness of the hours, but I have been keeping up with all the explanations. So I understand that CareFera customers, they get an additional 1%, which is $17.50 per residential low income, another 30% reduction in T&D. And yet when I look at the slide, I don't know what number it is the energy burden, which has the average costs, different segments. So I am looking at the differential I somehow thought would be way more it is saying, just to look at the total average energy bill, exactly that one, the fourth column in the dark blue, $253 per month for the most vulnerable and $381 for the least vulnerable. They're already getting about a 50% discount. And then it is down to $253. It just strikes me. It calls out to me. That's why I'm asking why. What am I missing here?
So I think one thing to keep in mind is that these categories, it represents, let's say, 250,000 customer accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Only about 25,000 are on Carefera. And so then they're sort of sprinkled throughout these categories because, people live in different places. Just because these categories are based on census tract level zones. So whereas Carefera is a account level piece of information. So I think what you're asking is how come it's a little bit not as stark as you might expect. And I think that's because they're actually, even though there's probably, and I know that there's more Carefera customers in the most vulnerable quadrant that we've listed here, they're not all in there. They're actually spread throughout. And so you're not kind of, in these averages, it's not jumping out in the same way.
Okay, thank you. That helps. The census tract, that was the part I wasn't thinking about. Thank you so much.
It also occurs to me that some of those people with lower income are dealing with less efficient appliances and nobody's insulated their building. And so I could see how that could also create that discontinuity.
Yeah, great. Sorry,
and then,
Director Tyson, can I just, you just made me realize that we should also say this piece, which is that there is an important distinction between a rate and a bill, right? A rate is what you pay and they get this big discount on that. But to your point, the bill can be actually quite similar because you're using a lot more energy for some reason. Okay. So that's an important call.
All right. And Alternate Director Shannon then?
Please forgive me because I'm new here. So
get a little closer maybe, or turn it on. Is it on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we go.
Okay. I was just saying I'm new, so there's much of this that's all new information to me. Do we ever work in conjunction with PG&E on outreach or programs? It sounds like SBCE is doing everything independently.
Yeah, we certainly do partner with PG&E on a lot of things. And some of these programs that we are promoting, for example, the Home Intel program is a PG&E program that we have, we're putting on our website, we're sending out there as well. So we coordinate with them on some of the program designs that we do and on some of the outreach as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. We're able to access some information about the type of outreach they're doing in our specific communities. So specifically for Carefera, every single month, they're working with CBOs throughout Santa Clara County, throughout the entire region that PG&E serves, to promote these programs. Because they serve beyond SBCE service territory, we're not necessarily able to promote those hand in hand. So we can see what work they're doing and either reach out to those organizations and try to bolster that work or do work in areas that we may feel that they're missing. So to Justin's point, we try to complement their work, but don't necessarily co-brand materials, if you will.
Is there in general a good relationship, like to your counterparts over at PG&E that you can talk with and they might call you with questions about what SBCE is doing, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think particularly in the programs space, there's a really good relationship with the folks at PG&E who are working. I mean, there's a shared objective on trying to decarbonize and doing some of this. I think for the affordability piece, I think it's largely similar in that there's strong interest in helping these customers and reaching them. And so, yeah, we do have good relationships with them.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other comments, so I would just want to thank Justin, Peyton, and Michaela for your presentation. That was for information only. And then let's get some public comment. I don't see any in the room, nor on the screen. Thank you. So with that, let's move on to our final issue, which is board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Do we have anything to offer? Say yes. Okay, go ahead. Director Walia.
Thank you, Chair.
I want to thank SVCE for the opportunity to attend the joint venture Silicon Valley, State of the Silicon Valley last Friday. It was an exceptionally, well, I will say that every year, exceptionally informative session. Russell Hancock is fabulous, of course, and we had the added bonus of a great keynote speaker, David Brooks, this time. I was going to mention this anyway, but I want to add another sentence right now. A lot of the discussion, especially in the last item that we just talked about, the affordability, and some references to other costs that the residents in our county are facing, in our territory, in SVCE territory are facing. That was brought home to everyone there at the conference. And yes, we can look at the data, the statistics, without attending the conference, but I think the way the narrative is brought forward and was brought forward last Friday was extremely helpful. So for that, I want to thank SVCE for the opportunity.
Thank you. Director Walia? Did you have something, Dr. Showalter? Yes, go ahead.
Yes. I'm very pleased to announce that Mountain View has finally opened our Ringsdorf Park Aquatic Center. And you may have heard about this. This is the first all-electric aquatic facility. This state-of-the-art center aligns with our commitment to sustainability and innovation in public infrastructure. And I have to tell you, this was not a smooth project. This was supposed to be opened last April, and it got a soft opening Monday a week ago, and we are having our grand opening on March 29th, and we would love for all of you to come if you would like to come to it. The reason that it was difficult is because when you build a large pool facility, you can't just take things off the shelf to do that. They don't exist. So you have to put systems together, and unfortunately, some of the subcontractors didn't talk as closely to one another as they should have to make sure that everything fit, and some of it didn't. So it literally had to be reconstructed, and some of it had to be, repiped, which was very unhappy. But we're there now. It's functioning, and the facility is powered by an advanced all-electric heating system, eliminating the need for natural gas. It features 22 high-efficiency heat pumps and a large array of photovoltaic thermal solar panels, significantly reducing our carbon emissions. The pool holds nearly 500,000 gallons of water, which are all kept warm through a highly efficient solar thermal and heat pump system. And this transition to all-electric operations is estimated to save 496 tons of CO2 annually, supporting Mountain View's climate action goals. And, as we all know, all electricity purchased for this facility is sourced from none other than Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the Green Prime 100% renewable energy plan. And so I just, I really wanted to bring this to everyone's attention, because a lot of times we talk about programs as if everything ran really smoothly. This was easy. This was duck soup kind of thing. This was really easy to make. That's not how this was. We really had to, our staff had to just work through issue after issue after issue and rise to the occasion. And they did do that, and I'm very proud that they did that. But I hope you all will come by, and this is an opportunity too for all of us to learn from each other's mistakes. So when you're building your next municipal pool, you're making your next municipal pool electric, you need to come talk to us about what we learned, because we learned a lot. So then the other thing I wanted to say, not nearly as exciting but still cool, is that we're having a campaign in Mountain View calling it the Year of the Heat for the Heat Pump, and we're going to roll this out at our Earth Day celebration. And we were, in the consent calendar, we passed a rebate program, and Mountain View is going to put in some extra money to go with that. And we're very pleased that Silicon Valley Clean Energy is going to administer that. So somebody will just put in their zip code and what they're buying, and you know, and our system, Silicon Valley Clean Energy System, will tell them what the rebate is. They won't have to go shopping all over to figure that out. So we're really appreciative of that assistance, and we think people are going to, you know, it's going to add a lot of value to these programs. So just wanted to share those two things with you. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Director, and that is a huge accomplishment, that pool. We'll go with the Vice Chair and then Director Scazola.
I'll go very quickly. So I just also wanted to invite everyone to our April 5th Earth Day event. That'll be at the Sunnyvale City Hall again, but there will be, and thanks to SVCE staff, it'll be tabling, but we'll have clean electric, we'll have our EVs there. We'll also have, you know, a walk of basically tours of our outdoor trees, of our of the City Hall, which, you know, is the Net Zero City Hall. So if people have not been there previously, this is another chance. April 5th, Saturday, April 5th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Sunnyvale City Hall. So, and I'll keep that short. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Scazola.
Thank you. So just wanted to announce Campbell will be hosting, along with SVCE, BayREN, California Green Business Network, and the Campbell Chamber of Commerce. We're having a business incentives lunch and learn event. So that's going to be on Monday, March 17th at noon in the Roosevelt Redwood Room at the Campbell Community Center. Make sure to register ahead of time. As it says, lunch and learn. Lunch will be provided, but you're not going to get your lunch if you don't register. Come on by if you don't care about food anyways. Yeah, so we're going to be exploring ways your business can save money through energy efficiency, sustainability measures, and more. So come on down.
Great. I believe that's, Director Lee. Is this it?
Yep, one last announcement is the State of the County for 2025 for Santa Clara County will be held this Friday, March 14th at the Board Chambers on 70 West Heading Street in San Jose, starting at 5:30. Be there early because we expect a full house if you want a nice seat, and looking forward to seeing many of you. All of you could watch us, of course, on YouTube as well. We'll be broadcasted live. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. I believe that wraps it all up, so I will hereby adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you next time. I did.